Are you yearning to wake up each morning and ignite a new meaning and purpose in life and beyond? Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael McGinnis, an award-winning author, speaker, and educator on human potential, and your host on You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Life presents us with challenges that serve as catalysts for growth. The pivotal question is, how do we respond to these challenges? Or better yet, opportunities. Do we adopt a victim mindset or rise to become victors? Our goal here is to guide and inspire you to master the most amazing journey you have, your life. You Can Do It starts now. Hey, good morning, everybody. Michael McGinnis here with You Can Do It with guest Heather. Again, this is fabulous because we're continuing our series on retirement. What a powerful series. And wait till today. I think today is really this capstone of it because we're bringing in and summarizing the research of Dr. Riley Moynes. Dr. Riley Moynes probably did and what is considered to be the most extensive research and the best research and most relevant research pertaining to retirement. And he himself is in it and experienced it along with myself and so many others. So we're going to actually be walking through those 4 phases of retirement and talking about what it looks like, and more importantly, what are some of the things that we could do in those stages, because it certainly has its challenges. And remember, the purpose here is all about your full potential. And you're even going to see the updated model of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, including what Abraham Maslow put in as he was getting older. And he realized there's another stage at the top called self-transcendence. And it's going to relate to his phase 4 as we'll talk about it. But let's begin with Heather giving us a welcome and an introduction to the phase, and we'll talk through each one of those. Good morning, Heather.
Morning, Michael. I'm so happy to be here again and to continue this series on retirement. Like you said, this is a really powerful topic today, and I think it kind of brings everything together for everyone. So just hitting on those 4 phases of retirement is really defined by Dr. Riley Moynes. I'll walk you through each phase and we'll talk about, how Michael's experienced those. So let's start out looking at that first phase. This is the vacation phase, sometimes called the honeymoon phase, right? It's that phase that when we think about retirement, we're so excited about. We relate it to going on our vacation, during our busy working lives phase of life, and thinking, retirement's going to be like this every day. I'm going to do whatever I want and spend time doing the things that I love. Maybe you think, I'm going to go golfing every day, or I'm going to go to the beach every day, or whatever that thing is that you're looking forward to. But it's that time that we look forward to feel that sense of freedom, excitement that we have about it. It's our time. We're going to travel and relax. Again, finally do all those things that our busy working lives didn't allow us to do, except in little snippets when we went on vacation. And so we have this initial rush of enthusiasm, like we leave our workplace and we're like, yeah, I'm on permanent vacation. I can't wait. So this is the part that most people going through their normal working lives, that all during that time that they're planning, their estate planning and their financial planning, that's what they're picturing retirement is going to be. So, Michael, I would love to hear, when you went into retirement, how was that phase for you?
Oh, great question. And did a great introduction to that too, because it's as the name implies, vacation, honeymoon phase. And, we've experienced similar stages like this and phases,
Mhm.
when we get married, right? There's that honeymoon phase, right? And initially it's all of the benefits of being a couple and together, and you're starting off, and right, what happens over time? And then that's when we'll get into the future stages. But we'll go through that period of where it's really a high, a rush. It's something new. It's exciting. Even when we get the first job, right? The first paycheck's the same kind of a thing. And then what happens, right? It becomes the regiment, the grind, and then it has its own set of phases. Well, For me, it was like a lot of clients that I work with. I work with a lot of people who have recently lost their jobs and they're
Mhm.
going through phase. Well, many of them are also older. And that's one of the trends I see today too, is that a lot of the people getting laid off are the older workers, right? They make a lot
Mhm.
more money, time to move them along to sort of uh, corporate America kind of a mindset. Let's move them along. Let's get a couple of young workers and pay them less and all of this kind of challenge that they have. And so like them, it was a rough start. So it wasn't so much a vacation or a honeymoon because it was like forced into this. And he really had to take these packages, right? As otherwise they were laid off without the package or just laid off, period. And so that kind of pushing in, was that challenge. So I had to absorb and work through that change as well. But there was that essence of all of a sudden being able to sleep in a little later, and there was this, I like this kind of a thing. And so I was already to some degree adjusting. Remember William Bridges' model of change, right? There's the ending, there's the losses, and it was that uncomfort, but it was also the transition. And I was quickly in that because there was sort of this excitement to it. I was able to do some new things. What do I want to do? And I did some things. So I had some of that experience with it, but it's true to what he said in his research. It's typically short-lived. And mine probably didn't even last that full year up front because, and I'll talk about that, what happened to sort of creates phase two on that. But for a lot of people, you will see that. And I know people, they'll think of a major project. I know of a neighbor who started to work on their house and make over their house or do some trips and finally to go visit family and spend family, a dream of being able to go and travel overseas. And so there were a lot of things that were very joyous, and people were starting to go hiking or do different trips. I met those, as I mentioned in one of the podcasts, on my trip to Yosemite recently. So that was my experience with it. Heather, thanks for asking.
Yeah, yeah, very, very interesting, and I love your, um, the viewpoint because you didn't have. Well, I want to say you didn't have the typical retirement experience, right? You did have an experience that a lot of people are having today, right? They're either being pushed out of their roles or being offered retirement packages, and they have that excitement, and then they're like, "Oh no,
No, and I think that's
now what?"
really the case and that's a good point because I'll add to that too, is that, you know, typically people come into this by getting to the age and they select when they're going to retire, right? But that's not happening as much anymore. Businesses are changes and they're moving people out. And again, realistically, older people get impacted by this. And so we're forced into this. So that's where that phase one is very often bypassed almost into phase two because of those circumstances. But even, as I know others that sort of go through coming to retirement today, there used to be these stages of which there was that proverbial gold watch given, the ceremony at the end. Are you retiring? Those things rarely happen. A lot is in corporate America as much anymore. It's, oh, congratulations. Okay, move on. Next, and so
Yeah.
so you do sort of get this short, abbreviated ending that can have some of an impact. Some people still get that traditional. I think that's very helpful when they can get that because it helps to create an ending. And it's really important because psychologically, in those phases of change that William Bridges talks about, it's important to understand that. And so it's good to have that kind of experience where you are really sent off with a welcome manner. But a lot of times today, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great point that you have that ending point in that phase of your life. Um, but interestingly, as you go into, we start looking at phase two of retirement, and that's really that phase of loss. Because even though you had that ending, maybe some closure to your, work life phase, you're now in a phase of who am I? Right. And as you mentioned, it's sometimes it's a year, sometimes up to 2 years between that retirement and then actually getting to this phase. But a lot of people aren't prepared for this phase of retirement when they start to realize the things that they've lost. And I think Dr. Riley Moynes defines 5 different losses. One is your structure. Right? You had to get up and you had to be somewhere at a certain time, and whether it was 5 days a week or 3 days a week doesn't really matter. You still had some sort of structure in your day that was driven somewhat by outside forces. You didn't have to define that structure yourself on a daily basis. The second loss that a lot of people incur is that identity. Their identity was so strongly tied to what they did in the workplace. Especially if they were a leader or a manager, it was like that's what they looked forward to every day, and that's what they planned, and that's who they were. You think about people say, well, what do you do? And a lot of people go right to what is their role in the workplace, right? They don't talk about the things that they personally do. It's, oh, well, I'm a manager, or I'm a cook, or I'm whatever it might be. So our identity is really strongly tied to those things that we do for decades. So that's a second loss that we can experience. The third is relationships. We don't hang a lot of importance, I believe, on the relationships that we have with those that we spend so much of our time with every day in the workplace, whether it's just, our normal interactions in our job, but it can also be maybe external customers, external vendors. Maybe you belong to employee resource groups while you're in the workplace. So there's all these relationships that you've built over the years. And now all of a sudden, once you leave, most of those relationships just fall to the wayside because they were working relationships. They weren't, maybe you've a few personal ones that carry on, but not too often. That fourth loss is sense of purpose, right? Whether you enjoyed your job or not, it gave you a sense of purpose. You had that thing that you were either looking forward to doing or expected to do each day that gave you that sense of belonging, and this is the thing that I do. So we lose that as well because a lot of people wake up in the morning after they retire and they're like, what am I here for? What am I doing? What is my purpose now that I don't have that job anymore? And number 5 that Dr. Moynes talks about is loss of power. So think of power as, especially if you were a leader, or maybe you own something specific in your job. And so there's a sense of power, even though you might not think like, yeah, I have power over this or over people, or there's still that human need, or that sense that we lose. And so when we don't have that place to go, that thing to do, that sense of power is lost also. So these are all those 5 things, really are what keep us grounded. And all of a sudden, they're gone. So this phase 2 of loss can be very traumatic for people. And I think, and I know you've talked about these, and Dr. Moynes talks about them as well, as experiencing the 3 Ds of retirement. That decline, that depression, and even divorce is really high in this phase. So we can have a lot going on that, again, we aren't always prepared for. So, Michael, I'm curious to hear. I know that you've experienced, the 3 Ds and had the experience with these losses. So, how did you work through that?
Oh, it's a good introduction again, and you set a good tone for this. And as I'm already realizing, Heather, we'll probably maybe do another podcast on the latter 2 stages, because there's a lot to unpack in this,
Yeah.
and you laid it out, and beyond that too. I'm just pointing out, looking at remind myself of some of the research is. We talked about the depression, and there was data he gave from the Mayo Clinic, 40% likelihood to develop signs of clinical depression when retire, right?
Yeah.
That's a significant number. Divorce, get this, the rate of divorce over 50 doubles. Now,
Yeah.
think that's tough? Over 65 triples, right? And most of us, as we think back of that era, and I remember I grew up in that, divorce wasn't just as common, right? You didn't do it, whether you were happy or not. It wasn't really
No.
cultural, kind of acceptable or tied into religions or faiths or whatever it might have been. But that data is staggering,
Yeah.
and again, all of this stuff I can relate to on it. And then the other thing that it says, it reminds us that we lose all of these all at the same time. So it's not some gradual thing, but along with the job losses and then the change in pace, and all of a sudden hitting all of these walls and relationship challenges that start to emerge, it's no wonder why this phase is really difficult and well worth the commentary on, because
Hmm.
what's so important is you be aware of this and you plan for it. I know the reaction of many. Oh, it won't happen to me. Remember, I can remember saying that, with being married. Won't last forever. It'll never happen to us, right? But yet, why does it with over 50% of couples, right? And so it's just the kind of a thing that we don't educate ourselves if we don't open our eyes to this reality. And that's the key. When you do that, the benefit of all of this, even though initially very depressing to sound like that, but the great news is it educates us. And once we know the likelihood of what happens, we can better prepare for it. And that's the secret to any one of these phases. For me, and by the way, there was one other data point just looked at there too, is that the highest rate of suicide, men over 75,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and now I get it. I understand that because of going through the changes, why that can be. And the aloneness, the loneliness, all of these things that we mentioned that continue to go on and be the challenges as we go through the retirement phase. So for myself, this is all just a major wake-up call in my life, right? I mean, with what William Bridges labeled this is these times of wake-up calls. This is a significant wake-up call because how much change we're experiencing in a relative short period of time. And so even for myself, there was the decision, to end the marriage. And it was my wife who chose that to her. Again, not getting into any of the rationale, whatever, but it happens. Now, what I can share is I have down at a club, and that's actually one of the anecdotes there. Why we're a sports fan for soccer, and we meet to watch the games. And I remember this one gentleman came in and he was all sad. And I go, "What's going on?" He goes, "My wife just threatened divorce and he just recently retired." And I go, "Oh, I'm sad to hear that. What's going on?" Said, "So I could deal with you when you were working," she said, "but this 24/7 stuff has got to go. You got to get out of the house." You know? And
Yeah.
and and it was the kind of thing as one of those differences, right? That we didn't have, and you begin to start thinking of, oh, it's all of this going to do. But again, this relationships have to rekindle. They have to reconnect. They've got to really step and look back in the mirror and deal with the fact that this is our phase and a lot of changes are occurring, and many as they do seek help and assistance. I know I've been in counseling and my counselor tells me all the time about, how many are there today in this phase of life. And so those are the things. And of course, so that happened, and along with the divorce, of course, affects money. Right. So, of course, who's the winner in divorces? The attorneys, right? All this money starts to leave. And now what? Well, all of these plans to sort of have this longevity and do these things can get interrupted,
Mm.
right? And so then that came along. For I was married later in life, so my kids were still in college, so were all of those expenses in there. So the pressure and stress, you sort of just keep afloat from all of the financial changes on top of everything, were also characteristic of that too. But so let's talk about some of the things that that works. So I would hit the wall, and again, be the first to admit that what I suggest to anybody is start hitting these walls, you know, go and get counseling, go and get help of a professional to really work through that, work with Heather, work with others that really can be able to, you know, relate to, understand, and help guide you moving forward. Because there's a lot to it. And it's all going to happen at once. And it's like any new phase in life, it's different, it's awkward. And sometimes we just need that talking things through and to deal with that emotional element of it, which can be tough. Remember those emotions that change? A lot of them up front is the anger, plea bargaining, and depression can be tough things to sort of work yourself through. Again, always get the guidance and support of others on here. And so that's what I did. And so that was my lifeline that I threw out and really helped me up front sort of just deal with the overwhelming of this. And there was great guidance on my counselor's part to really be able to guide me going forward. I had to navigate through all of the emotions of change, and I was really starting to feel depression, you know, from all of these change happening at one time, and the collective part of it started to really to wear me down on this. And then there came a point of which you suggested, got to get out. And it's going to talk to really relate to the stage three or phase three of experimentation, you know, which was, okay, we hit that wall and now what? And the antidote part is getting help, sort of getting yourself to sort of manage through this loss, working through the loss phase and the transition phase. And part of that transition will be that next phase. And I'll come back to this because what I could relate to here and what I relate so far is the real tough part of this. And it's real. And again, my biggest recommendation for anybody is that in your 30s and 40s, right? We're not thinking about retirement. It's the farthest thing from our mind. We don't even want to think about that. But this is the time to start thinking about to ensure, number one, that financial savings are going to be in place for retirement, significant challenges as we're living longer to ensure that we have enough money to last now, this 30 years plus. And along with that is the mental and emotional, right? Is realizing that, you know, all of these visions that we have of retirement, you sort of have to sort of put them out and sort of say, you know, but let's debunk some of these and let's sort of say, yes, they sound great, sound ideal, but let's contrast this to the statistics and the data of reality and begin to start looking at and understanding that we're about to approach a tough phase in our life. Great news is I deal with clients all of the time on this. And this whole conversation is what we go through. Well, what's the first comment they say? Where were you 10, 20 years ago? I really would have loved to hear it. But of course, they're the first to admit they probably wouldn't have wanted to even listen to it because they're not even thinking about it. This is listening to it and then engaging that and beginning to play. It's a major phase and it's a major change in life.
Yeah, that's great, Michael. And I'm glad that you hit on, you know, in our 30s and 40s, you know, we're not thinking about retirement. But if I could give one insight, it would be your 30s and 40s are a great time in your life to start thinking about, what do I really enjoy and what am I good at? Whether it's and even if it is your job, how might you carry that throughout your life into your later phases of life? Um, and not just like, I love to golf and that's what I want to do when I retire. I don't mean to pick on golfing, but that seems to be a lot of the people that I know that retired, that's what they were going to do. And yeah, if I could go back in time, you know, that would have been 20, 25 years ago. Wish I would have had somebody say, think about that too. You know, what are you going to do in that third part of your life? Because we might spend 20, 30 years in the phase of retirement, right? And we want to enjoy what we're doing and really, you know, as you talked at the beginning, reach that self-actualization. How do I, you know, or self-transcendence, sorry, the self-transcendence, like really go beyond what are just my needs and how can I give back and start thinking about that when we don't want to think about it.
Yeah, well said. And I think it's a great way to sort of lead into conclusion for this podcast is setting the stage, even though it sounds tough, and it is tough. Okay, let's face it, it is, right? And a lot of people we don't want to even listen with or deal with it. We like to keep those blinders on. But I think along the way we come to realize that how much it could have benefited us is if we did indeed sort of take the time to prepare, for a change and understand the challenges associated with that. I see that in sports all of the time. They prepare for the tough parts of it, right? And that's what makes the better athlete is they embrace that challenge and they realize what the challenges are and can begin to mentally prepare themselves. I think of the marathon, right? You know you're going to hit a number of those hurdles. Along the way, your body just wants to stop. It's not naturally running, 25, what is it, 25 miles, right? And so you've got to work on it and build on it. And there's the dedication and tough part. Well, it's the same thing. Is if you take that time up front and understand it, then you can better prepare for it. And the benefit of that is going to be next podcast. And this is the perfect setup for that. Is that the next one is going to talk about coming out of this tough time, right? It's starting to move in how do we really move forward? And this is a part of which I really look forward to sharing the examples of that, of going through the phase 3 of where we're really beginning to, what do you call it, rapid experimentation, begin to start thinking of different ideas. And what a chance to start, wow, wait a minute, I'm in a new part of my life. What do I want to do? What do I want to be? Right. And although, it's challenging at first, it's exciting at part just to realize that you have that opportunity. And then phase 4, which is, as he talks about, really reinvent and rewire. This is really the case. You do. And for those that make it, and we'll talk about these, for those that make it, you really get a chance to do what my phase is. I talk about my framework, beginning of personal growth, is self-discovery. And then as you discover yourself, and as he says here, the goal is to realize some key realizations. We'll talk about those times, really important, because then when you understand them and become those, you really feel great. Tonight, for example, I'm up at the Honor Foundation volunteering. And it's one of the many things now that I'm doing right now. What an awesome experience to volunteer with Navy SEALs using my gift of helping them come out of their military sector from some real challenging jobs into the civilian sector. Now, that's a big challenge in it itself. And what a pleasure it is to meet these amazing people and to be able to help them. And at the end of the day, that's how I walk home, feeling the kicks and giggles from that of volunteering. And those are sort of setting the stage for us going to the next phase because it can be wonderful, right? So even though we started off rough and tough, let's realize it, like anything really good in life, there's often prices to pay up front. And we talked about those. But for those who rise up to that challenge, then on the other side of it is utopia. It's the chance to really become your true self in life. And that might not sound like anything until you're feeling it. And I'm feeling that these days. And what a feeling to wake up and feel incredibly valuable and having meaning and purpose in my life. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned. Next phase is coming. I'm Michael McGinnis, and you've been listening to You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Tune in every second and fourth Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio. As a recognized educator, author, and speaker on human potential, let's learn together how to make the most out of this life and to put a ding in your universe. This is the incredible journey of personal and spiritual growth, self-discovery, and enlightenment. For more information, visit growhumanpotential.com.